Okay, I'm going to start this training right now and explain the system to you. So this is a site called emergentmind.com. It's got a 3-layer feed-forward network that simulates backpropagation, a whole bunch of problems. I've got it doing XOR here. So these are our hidden nodes. This is our output. These are our inputs. There are the targets, inputs and outputs. Remember, zeros are false, ones are true. So one or the other, true, both true, false, both false, false. And this system is working its way down that gradient. And it's doing so by changing the weights between these individual nodes, both between the input and the hidden and the output. And these gray connections here are inhibitory connections, and these black connections here are excitatory connections. And the thickness of the connection tells you how big the weight is, that is how much the weight is. So thin lines have low weights, they don't pass on a lot of activation or inhibition, and thick lines have big weights and they pass on a lot of activation or inhibition. And as we can see, right, we have an average error here as we go through these training sets of about 0.03% of the time. So 2% of the time it gets this answer wrong, this answer wrong. 97% of the time it gets these answers right. And we've gone through 23,000, 24,000 iterations of that training set. As it gets closer and closer to the optimal solution, it makes slower and slower progress, and ultimately it may stall out for a really long period of time, never getting much better than it did. It may even start to get a little bit worse and then get better, then get worse, and then get better. So I'll stop it. I'll try and stop it when it gets down to 0.02, say 3. And as you can see, it's desperately trying to figure out how to change its weights in order to get down below this. But it's having a pretty hard time. It can't seem to push it past these low levels that it's got here. And I'll go ahead and stop it, I would say. Now. So as you can see, it started off with a pretty high error rate, and it configured its weights until now it only gets this wrong about 1% of the time. It gets these right about 98%, or gets it wrong too, and it gets this wrong about 3% of the time. So it's gone from pretty random performance to pretty good performance, but it's done so, right, because it's gone through its training set 30, almost 40,000 times. So again, backpropagation of error then, it really does work by this slow gradient descent. Sorry about that. By the slow gradient descent down this error surface here. However, there are limitations to backpropagation of error. And the bad news is that the rule is not guaranteed to find the ideal or best solution. So for a problem of any complexity, it may get stuck in a local minima. That is, it may get stuck where it's been trying to work its way down, but any attempt to get out of this sort of dip it's got here is going to require it to increase significantly the error it gets here. And so it may not be able to hop out of this and work its way down towards the ideal. And so in some cases, they never get to an ideal solution. They just get stuck in a local minima and they don't get any better.